All right. WWDC21 day one is over. Are you too excited?
Yeah, I was gonna do woohoo, but then I realized
Yes.
I'm not. I'm a bit sad that the first day's over already. It went by really fast. I am super excited though.
All right. So, what is your number one most exciting thing?
I didn't realize we had to rank these things. Okay.
Yeah.
I'm so excited.
We won't hold you to it being number one. Just an exciting thing.
I gotta say, I'm
thing.
really excited to see improvements to SwiftUI.
Everyone we spoke to about that today was like, yeah, you guys with your SwiftUI.
And like we're talking about like the most nitpicky things. Like I don't think it's nitpicky, but we're like, now you can decide how the separators in the table view should look like, and people are like, "Wow, that's newsworthy," and I think it is. I'm very excited.
I mean, it's from two sides, right? If you've lived in your UI kit world and you're like, yeah, SwiftUI, I might look at that at some point, and then people at a meetup are like super excited about that you can finally hide the separators in a table view. You're like, ooh, maybe I should not look at SwiftUI anytime soon. But if you've lived in this world, it's actually a super nice improvement. It's like a big finally, and it's just full of finallys, right? Mm-hmm. You can now have pull to refresh, the technology we invented, like, I don't know, 10 years ago. You can now use it in SwiftUI. You know how you have sheets and you sometimes want to prevent them from dismissal? There's now a view modifier for that. You know how you can have conditional compile flags if you want to have this only runs on macOS, this only runs on iOS, this only runs on iOS 15. You can now have that condition only run the view modifier.
When you say that, it makes it sound like you couldn't do that at all in the past. It was just more cumbersome to do that in the past, and now it's nicer.
Yes.
Yeah. So all those things. I mean, to anyone that's not been kind of doing this for a year, is like, okay, whatever. But it's super exciting because it's like for us working on this, it just saves all the things that are. Those are things where we just couldn't find a good workaround before, like the conditional compile stuff. It's like we in our app we have like 5 different ways of trying to make it at least annoying to deal with, and all of them have kind of different trade-offs. And now there's just a way that's just the way you think it should work, and it works that way.
It sounds like they listened. They read all of your radar. So thanks for filing those.
And it's
now that we know that you have a direct line to Apple, if I have any new features I need, I'll ask you to file them.
But it's also please. Like they mentioned during the presentation that they are now using SwiftUI heheavily themselves for a bunch of apps. Yeah. And I think that's something we've been asking for, right?
That's huge.
Just use it yourself. You'll run into things. We're not way smarter than you to figure out, hey, we would really like lists to work when you change the position of an element, but now they run into that and they have to fix them.
Yeah. No, I'm very happy to hear that as well, and I feel like it's sooner than I expected them to take it on for like bigger, like more core apps internally. So I think that's really good. I think like you said, Kai, yes, they will run into those things, but it also sort of shows like they believe in this being a good framework for them to use as well. So yeah, super exciting. Another thing.
Now they're in it, right? Now they have to fix things because they're not going to ship weather that just goes wonky all of a sudden.
You mean the weather app? They can't really control.
What? We're not blaming SwiftUI for bad weather.
Why is it raining? Yeah. So that's that. I think that's not my number one thing, and I think if that would have been everything we got this year, I would have been happy. But we didn't. We got a lot more things.
Adam, what's your number one? Do you have a number one thing you're like?
I added this to the list. It's kind of boring in a certain sense, but we knew that the async await stuff in Swift was coming. We knew it was being added, and so it wasn't this amazing surprise. But seeing it mentioned, I think it was the State of the Union. They mentioned it more explicitly and sort of reminding me, like, oh yeah, that's right. I'm excited to go and replace all of my existing asynchronous code with much nice looking code, because I'm not unique in this way, I'm sure, but I have written a lot of code where you think you're doing simple things, like I'm just going to do this asynchronous call and take the result and do this other asynchronous call and then take the result and do this other asynchronous call, and it seems very straightforward in your mind, and then you write it, and while you're writing it, it even seems kind of normal, and then you look at it the next day and you think, how can I make this so that the next developer can just quickly glance at this and understand exactly what's happening, especially if you have some conditionals in there where you're doing different asynchronous things depending on some condition. And it's really hard to structure the code in a way. Even if you put comments and things, I've done things where I wrap everything in other functions so that I can have the asynchronous nesting be very simple, where it just calls simple functions and then have the real work in the functions. But that gets very complex. I feel I'm crossing my fingers that this will allow me to simplify all that, and I'm very rarely excited to just go and refactor a bunch of code like on a massive scale, but this is probably the one thing where I am.
All right, I put it over to you, Kyle. What is your number one favorite thing?
I mean, you already took it, the SwiftUI stuff. It's just, if you've been doing this for a year and there are any kind of improvements because there's nothing you can really do, right? If we've done SwiftUI for a while, certain things were broken and we can't be like, hey, let's fix it ourselves. We just relied on the frameworks, and a lot of those things I've run a lot of our sample projects over the last few hours, and so many things are no longer broken. Like just that alone. Like there is a specific initializer for text with a date and a style of timer, and you want it to behave like a timer, right? If you give it a date of now, it would start ticking 1 second, 2 seconds, 3 seconds. Cool, right? Like that's a neat feature. But if you put it in scroll view on iOS 14, it would just sometimes stop ticking. And all of a sudden you're like, well, now it's a useless feature because I don't want to show my timer. And then sometimes it randomly stops ticking. And that's fixed. That's awesome. Not like, hey, let's have a developer conference about how cool our timer now actually ticks. But super exciting because now we don't have to go through our weird workarounds where we kind of kick the view every now and then to make it resume again. But otherwise, I do think Xcode Cloud is super interesting to me. I've been a heavy Buddy Build user up until a few years ago when Apple acquired them. I very much enjoyed it. It's great to work in a team. It has a lot of cool features that I think a lot of people wouldn't necessarily intuitively understand unless you're kind of using them. Like, I don't know if it will make it into Xcode Cloud, but what Buddy Build had was like a preview feature. So if there's a new Xcode beta coming out, it would build all your code just for you once the beta ships and gives you a report. Hey, did anything break? Are there any new deprecations in your code? Is there anything that's weird that you should look at? It might even run your UI tests on the latest. If you do have UI tests, it might even run them on the latest simulators. And gives you a report. Hey, did anything new break? And that's just super useful.
And also give you a screenshot of that as well.
Yeah.
Send that to you.
But it's just super useful because you don't have to go away and do that every time. If you're like busy with something else, it's nice to have tools that can do work for you and only tell you, hey, we need your attention over here because something actually broke. And I think that's super cool.
Yeah, I really do hope that it does that with the new Xcode versions, because I did think that was really valuable, because then you really know, okay, before September, we need to take care of these things, and it's very comfortable. And but in general, just being able to run all of your tests on a different machine and also do all of your sort of like the deployment and like preparing the app as well somewhere else. They have also added things sort of related to that, which is related to how you're signing your apps as well, which is happening, which is cloud-based. And I'm really excited to look into that more throughout the week.
But it's also things like, now I'm considering to update my Mac to Monterey, right? Because I want to use all new things. I want to make sure everything works. But as soon as you do that, you can no longer submit apps to the App Store, because it's Apple saying, hey, you're using this beta tool chain. We don't trust that stuff. Don't submit any builds with that. If you have something like Xcode Cloud, you don't have to worry about that. You write your code, use Xcode 13 for your as your source edit, essentially, and then it goes off to Xcode Cloud. They build it with a stable build, and you're good to go. Those kind of things are just super nice, that you essentially have a build machine, which I know a lot of developers have in their companies or at home. They have a separate machine that's kind of the build machine, but it's just a build machine you don't have to maintain. One where you know that, if Xcode 14 comes out, Apple's probably tested it on Xcode Cloud and probably even before it was shipped to you. So ideally, they already know that it will work nicely, and they might even be able to build your app before to see if there are any unexpected complications. Who knows what they're going to use it for, right? But I think that is exciting, and I think it's something, if it's affordable, I think that's the one thing we don't know pricing, right? If it's affordable to everyone, I do think there are a lot of features and a lot of utility that everyone get out of it. I mean, there's definitely if you're a larger team, you probably get more out of it than a tiny team. But I think everyone will get use out of it, assuming it is within, it's affordable or even a free tier available.
Yeah. And the way they were pitching it sounds like they're intending this to be for something that everyone would use. There was no hints that this is just a nice to have feature if you're like an advanced developer or you're a developer of a certain size. Yeah. The fact that they integrated it so tightly in Xcode, I think also kind of points to that I would, it's not going to be free, but I'd be surprised if it was, a cost at which, you couldn't use to some degree for most everyone.
New devices more accessible as well. Let's say Apple releases a new iPhone next year that has a different size notch, or this year even, right? Not just different size, maybe different screen dimensions are different. And you could, in theory, Apple could say, you know what? We make that device available in Xcode Cloud for you the day of the announcement of the phone. And now you can run your UI test there and you can get screenshots and make sure that everything looks right. And yeah, you can buy the phone in a month or in 2 weeks or whenever it comes out if you want. But at least you can already run it and be like, all right, I think we're in a good state. Speaking of Xcode, they're also like the team features. I think they integrate nicely with that, but I think they're also really cool. It's over the years, Apple included more and more of those kind of features into Xcode.
Yeah, things that felt more like, I guess, that were meant for pull requests and that type of flow. And I think it's really cool to start seeing those here. And it looks really nice how you have it all just inline in the coding. You can see comments from everyone.
It got me interested. I was curious. Do you use most of the existing source control tools within Xcode, or do you use command line or some external?
We use Tower.
Tool currently?
And then for pull requests, we tend to use GitHub directly. Just go there and look at our comments.
Yeah. Me too. And every time Apple adds something to Xcode like this, it gets me to think like, is this, have I just been ignoring a feature that actually works pretty well, and maybe I should give it a try? And I can't even say that I don't use it currently because I've given it a fair chance. It's just because, you have momentum behind what you currently do, but this might motivate me to just stop what I'm currently doing and say, maybe I should just try to go Xcode only for a little while and see how that goes.
Xcode 13 also has like all the branches a lot more prominent. It's like right next to your build button now. So it definitely feels like Apple's trying to push people to use those features more, or at least make them more accessible. And I think that's a sign that they think it sounds like they're using it internally. They probably have some kind of comments on their pull requests, I assume. So I'm looking forward to trying that again.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think there are many other things in Xcode, but I think the thing I want to talk a bit about is test flight for macOS. This is awesome. Like being a person who is and has been wanting to have a test flight version or have a Mac and wanted to send it out to people. It's just a hassle at the moment, the way that you do that. So having test flight there is something that everyone's so familiar with. So like the people who you usually would send your iOS build to, you can also send the macOS build to very easily. And yeah, I think it's really cool. And also the integration with like, with that, it's also like things like crash reporting and bug reports. I know it's not test flight directly, but there were some improvements to that in Xcode, which I think is really cool. And it would be cool if they improve the feedback mechanism as well, where you get like, I don't know if we got anything about that, where a user can send you feedback.
Can I be your first test flight user for your Mac app?
Definitely. That means you have to update to
Monterey.
Cool. Yeah.
Oh, all right, fine. It's worth it. It's worth it. I'm just for you. One thing I'll ask you real quick to wrap things up. Today was Monday when we got the State of the Union, the keynote. Tomorrow is when we first get to see the videos, and they release some amount Tuesday, then Wednesday, Thursday, etc. Quick quiz. How many videos do you think they're releasing tomorrow on Tuesday?
Shouldn't we know that? We can just look at how many sessions are.
I would think 40.
That's you could look, but I'm not asking you to look and count. I have looked and counted.
That's what we're doing. This is a competition, a guessing competition.
Mullen at Who Wants to Be a Millionaire? It's like, that's a question I could look up on Google. Why are you asking me that, dummy?
It's low stakes. You should have answered by now.
Okay, I'm gonna pick 28.
There are 58 videos tomorrow.
Really?
It took you 12 hours to answer, and I still won.
And on Wednesday, there are 62, and I didn't count for Thursday.
Wow.
I noticed because I was looking through them, just casually browsing, and I just felt like I felt like I was scrolling for 5 minutes, and I looked, and I was still on Tuesday, so I actually counted them. I guess though I don't know if there's more. Like if last year they made like a lot of shorter videos, and maybe they're embracing have more things that are like of shorter length, so we can cover more topics. I just thought it was very interesting, and I was just curious if it was just me that thought that 58 was a lot of videos for one day. Tomorrow we will discuss all 58 videos released. Just kidding.